as I'm sporting my LSU Odell Beckham jersey that I got for about $13 from Japan. It's stitched, it's fire, it's Nike, but no one knows that when I go out to the bars. And I got my LSU bucket. You guys know the story about Legends, how we went out there a couple years ago, sort of became adopted LSU fans, and they had a big win over the weekend, which, we'll get to in the recap. So let's start it off, man. First letter of the alphabet, for those of you that might not know, is A. And we're going with Pete Alonso. Alonso won Rookie of the Year in the National League. The only bright spot, really, for the New York Mets. I'm a Mets fan, and you guys know my level of involvement. I got a hair in my mouth. Level of involvement in baseball, it always depends and is contingent on whether or not the Mets are a good team. And more times than not, it's not really the case. But he hit that phase where he was really like the lone bright spot for the team. And even so, like, they went on that winning streak in the middle of the season too, which was really fun. And it got the crowd going, and Citi Field was pumping for those games. And, Alonso set the rookie home run record that Aaron Judge had just set a couple of years ago, and Alonso beat that. So shout out to Alonso and to the New York Mets. Hopefully we could keep him and not give him up for like some prospects or some shit like the Mets always do. B, I'm going to go with bad officiating. Yo, if you guys haven't seen this video, it's crazy. Driscoll hits Kenny Golladay on like a 3-yard pass, and Golladay gets tackled, let's just say in this hypothetical, at like the 42-yard line. He ends up spotting the ball on like the 39-yard line. And the referee, like, doesn't fact check it. He kind of just goes, yeah, you know what, Kenny, you're the referee now. You got the stripes. And it's just been the common theme of the NFL, right? Just bad officiating over and over and over again. Just, the challenges have been abysmal. And just across the board, just everything has just been whack. And it just continues, right? Questionable calls in the Green Bay game as well. And just a lot of BS over with the officiating. You just got to make them full time, right? All these guys are part timers, and you're a $1 billion league, right? Get some good officiating because it's hurting your product. C. Charles Rogers died at the age of 38. Charles Rogers was a former top 5 pick in the NFL. I believe he went to Michigan State, and he kind of, he was having a good rookie season, and then injuries just slowed him down. And then before you know it, he was out the league, and he's always featured on those top bust lists in NFL history. And it was really sad to see that guy go, man. 38 years old. He battled some sicknesses and whatnot, but rest in peace to Charles Rogers, who, a promising career just never panned out. If you get hurt when you're young, it's hard for you to bounce back. D is for, as you can see in the shirt, down goes Bama. Bama had like a 31-game winning streak at home. LSU had lost to them for 8 straight years. Ed Orgeron and the boys, who, shout out to him too. He was at USC, and USC didn't want to hire him for reasons not really known. And he's found a place. He fits the LSU attitude. And LSU beats Alabama in a way that you haven't really seen LSU win games. I mean, this year you have, but they're putting up 40 spots. And, Bama coming off extra time to prepare. So was LSU. But Tua balled out also. That guy is tough as shit. But it was Burrow. It was Burrow and the LSU boys. So shout out to them getting a big win. And, the leading favorite to win the Heisman and to win the national championship. E is for the EPL derby between Liverpool and Man City. Liverpool absolutely dominated them, folks. They won the Champions League last year. They haven't won the Premier League in a very, very long time. And right now they sit 8 points ahead of Man City. And, Sane balling, Salah balling, that whole team, just a lot of depth now. That's the luxury you have in soccer when you win all these major tournaments. You have money to build your bench, and then your guys don't get as tired, because Liverpool is playing the 38 games in Premier League, but then they're going deep into Champions League and FA Cups and all that other stuff. So shout out to Liverpool, man. 8 points ahead now. F is for flurries. Finally, we got some snow in the NFL. That Green Bay game was really, really cool. It was fun to see. It's just a good vibe. Like, when you watch football, it's meant to be played in the snow. And I just love that visual. Winter's here, folks. I know this weekend in New York City, it was like 32 degrees. 2 weekends ago, it was 65. So, yeah, don't want to get too political, and I don't know if this is a political take, but global warming is real, folks, and we better buckle up and try to get that shit together because it's not fun. G, as we mentioned before, Gordon Hayward now out 6 weeks with a hand injury. The Celtics, currently the top seed in the NBA in the Eastern Conference, so I would say it's fair to say they're exceeding expectations. Kemba Walker seems to be the kind of guy that fits that culture Brad Stevens is trying to build. And, a lot of young guys, and they seem to be buying in. So that's a big injury, though, for Gordon Hayward, who is really starting to ball out, too. H is for Haskins. Going forward, the Washington Redskins have announced that Dwayne Haskins is going to be their guy for the rest of the season, and rightfully so. It should be that because you got to see what you got in this kid. You have to see Daniel Jones, Kyler Murray, Dwayne Haskins, these guys that were taken in the first round. You got to see Drew Lock maybe in Denver, though Brandon Allen, he got a win in his last outing. Kyle Allen now too. This is the year where you got to check and see, watch these guys, get enough tape on them, and make the decision whether or not you're going to stay with them or move on, because it's a very, very deep quarterback class coming out next year. I is for Iron Man. The Iron Man streak of one Matthew Stafford, 136 straight starts, has snapped. A guy who, man, the famous game of his, like he popped his shoulder and then ended up leading a game-winning drive, I believe his rookie year. A guy who I think, when all is said and done, is going to be wildly underrated. At parts and times, he was overrated, but, and that's because of how much he got paid. But shit, man, if someone wants to give me $50 million, I ain't going to complain. So why should he? So Matthew Stafford has been playing with like a broken back. So that guy is tough as hell, man. So shout out to him, and his family has had to go through a lot. If you guys want to look up what's happened over the last couple of years with his wife and her battles, shout out to the Staffords. Shout out to his streak. It has come to an end, but I'm sure we'll see him soon. J is for our guy, Jared Gordon. Yo, Jared, if you see this, bro, good luck this weekend, man. Big scrap in Brazil against Charles Oliveira, a top 15 contender in the UFC's 155 division. Apparently, no one wanted to fight Oliveira, and Jared was like, fuck it, I'll do it. Anytime, any place. Big fight for him. He's not going to want to hear this because all fighters want to win, but it's kind of a good spot for him, man, where took it on short notice pretty much, and expectations are low. He's a plus 225 underdog, but shit, you don't got to tell me where you think. Don't tell me where my money's going, because you guys should know that. So good luck to Jared Gordon. You can watch him on ESPN this weekend. I believe it's going to be on ESPN Plus, but at the moment he's on main card because Charles Oliveira is a big name. So shout out to Jared Gordon. Let's get that W, boss. K is for the Knicks. Shit show. The Knicks are 2-7 or 2-8. Suffered another double-digit loss. I believe they have the most in the NBA. And word is that Steve Mills, the GM, wants to put together a meeting with James Dolan to fire Fizdale. And look, Fizdale, he hasn't figured out his rotations. I get that. But what do you want this guy to do? He has, I believe, 10 new players on the roster that he didn't have last year. And he also, they sold him on this dream scenario where you're going to get Durant and Kyrie and all these guys, and then you settle with like 17 power forwards on a 15-man roster. So I like Fizdale. Be patient with him. Unfortunately, it looks like he's going to be the scapegoat, but that's just New York. New York and the Knicks, that's just the shit that we always got to deal with as Knicks fans. L is for Lamar's world, and we're just living in it, folks. This dude could do no wrong. Again, has posted his second perfect passer rating of the year. Highlight tape, 47-yard run, the spin move, heard around the world. Currently tied with Russell Wilson. We do not know what the outcome of this Monday Night Football game, which is on in the background right now. So if you see me peeking over there, I'm being a degenerate right now because we got the Seahawks +6. But, Lamar Jackson, man, I admit defeat. I tip my cap to you, sir. I was completely wrong. I've mentioned it many, many times now that we need to start remembering that this dude stepped into an offense last year that wasn't built for him, and all Baltimore did from the playoff game against the Chargers that they lost at home until week 1 was completely build a team around Lamar Jackson's strengths and hide his weaknesses. And at the moment, it doesn't look like he has any weaknesses. So shout out to Lamar Jackson, currently plus 250 to win NFL MVP. M is for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Yo, I brought this up to Alan. Shout out to my guy, Alan, but I thought he was wrong. I think it's been an absolute home run move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. for many reasons, right? He has completely changed that defense around. He's also 22, 23 years old. He's still under contract for a couple of more years. He's a year removed from being a top 10 pick, arguably the best defensive player in that draft class. And you get a dude who's a baller. And the only issue with him was that he was in Miami and he was being lost in the shuffle. And no one wanted to be in Miami. I want to be in Miami, but that's for different reasons. But, Fitzpatrick, I don't care that they gave up a pick that might be a top 10 pick. If you look at the history of the NFL, a third of the players are a letdown. A third of the players become all pros, and a third of the players are out the league. That's just how it is with first-round picks. So why not? And you know how I am. I would give up draft capital for an established asset any day of the week, especially when a dude that's 22, 23 years old. So shout out to Pittsburgh Brains. Shout out to Minka Fitzpatrick. Not for nothing, kind of playing himself into Defensive Player of the Year candidacy. So shout out to him and shout out to the Steelers. At the moment, have a wild card berth if the season was to end today. And as for new top 4 coming, college football playoff, we lost Bama. Penn State took an L also. So you're probably going to have 2 new teams coming in, right? LSU is going to stay up there. Ohio State's going to stay in there. Is it going to be a Pac-12 team that sneaks in? Is Clemson going to get in there? Which I thought was kind of crazy because Clemson is actually the favorite to win the national championship prior to this past weekend. When the top 4 came out, Clemson was the favorite to win the national championship despite being outside the top 4. So you did have that, but there should be a new college football playoff coming up. Always for OPI fails again. If you guys watch that Tampa Bay game, you see Steve Keim, the GM in the background, absolutely loses his shit. Farrell Cooper gets basically tackled in the Tampa Bay game, and no flag gets called out. I believe it's single-digit offensive pass interference calls have been overturned. The OPI rule, which, again, tip of my cap off to everyone that called me crazy for it. I was a big fan of it. I thought that a lot of games are dictated and decided, I should say is a better term, by offensive or defensive pass interference. A guy could step back, chuck a ball 60 yards, and it could be a spot foul inside the end zone. In a lot of games, Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl basically doing the pass interference offense. Those years with like Jacoby Jones and Torrey Smith. Just, the Ravens offense for the longest time was just drop back and throw bombs and hope for PI. So definitely go and check that out. I'm going to try to find that tweet so you guys can check it out at Veterans Minimum. P is for Prescott. Prescott balled out Sunday Night Football. He was not the reasons why the Cowboys lost that game. Surpassed 300 yards. Just literally made every throw. Like, if you want to show someone a highlight tape of what every throw a quarterback should make in a particular game, it was that. Prescott absolutely balled out. That Sunday Night Football game against Minnesota, he showed that his ceiling could be a top 10, 5 to 10 quarterback in the league. And that was not something that I thought I could say about him not too long ago. Q is for questionable NCAA rulings. The Chase Young incident, I think, is the NCAA just being too anal about things. Chase Young, arguably the top defensive prospect in this year's NFL draft. He got suspended for the game over the weekend against Maryland, and it was because he took money prior to one of the seasons kicking off. I believe it was his freshman year from like a family friend or a teammate of some kind, and then it was to help his family out, and then he paid it back. These college kids, man, they don't have the luxury of being able to work. Like, that schedule is no joke. You wake up, you work out, you go to class, then you go to practice, and then you got to do homework or study, or you got meetings and shit. So they don't have the luxury of working. And I just think the NCAA, we just had that ruling come out, California versus the NCAA, and you see how these guys are going to be able to make profit off their likeness. And I think Chase Young is going to be the prime candidate of being able to do so in the near future. And more states are doing that because they don't want to lose recruits in recruiting, right? If I'm a kid and I'm like lit and I have 500,000 followers on Instagram and I'm the top wide receiver in the country, why not go to USC or UCLA, and I can make money and I can have an Instagram account and I can have Happy Tea and man, there's so much. I don't know why I thought about Happy Tea. I follow too many IG chicks, but you get all these sponsors and whatnot, maybe Tabber. Shout out to Tabber, cheap plug. Veteran at checkout. But why not go to California? So I think the NCAA is starting to push a lot of people's buttons, man. A lot of people's buttons. R is for Rams. Yikes. What was that? Jared Goff, if you look at his numbers, I believe it's 17 touchdowns and 16 interceptions in his last 16 games that he's played. The issue is obvious for me when I watch the LA Rams. Their offensive line is abysmal, and that's what happens when you pay Donald, you play Goff, you pay Gurley, you're gonna have to pay Jalen Ramsey. You're gonna have to, you have Brandon Cooks, who again hurt. I think it's 5 or 6 concussions in his NFL career. And this one is pretty severe. He did not play. It's basically the offense only looked good when you get Cooper Kupp going, and he had 0 points in fantasy this week. He didn't record 1 catch and a lot of drops. So the Rams offense, I think I'm still not selling stock on Jared Goff. He's no longer a top 7 quarterback that I had him last year, but I think it's the offensive line. And that's what happens when you try to bring all these big names in. A position got to take a hit. And for them, it's the offensive line. So that is not good for the LA Rams. Tough schedule to close out the year, and that division is way, way, way too tough. I mean, even the Cardinals are going to give them a run for their money. S is for Saints. What the fuck was that? The biggest upset of the year, if you consider the point spread. Saints were a 14-point favorite over Matt Ryan and the Falcons. Shout out to my guy Allen. Very excited. Anytime they beat the Saints, he says it's a win for Falcons fans. This is going to be in the discussion along with the Jets beating the Cowboys, along with the Falcons beating the Eagles as the WTF, how the hell did that happen game of the year? And it always happens, So the Browns beating the Ravens the way they did, and then the Ravens go on and they pummel New England Patriots. So Saints just laid an egg. I feel like every team has a laid an egg game every single year. And Drew Brees looked old in that game. So I'm sure the Saints will bounce back because they are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. T is for Tony Parker having his jersey retirement day. And, one of the most underrated players of our generation. He was never a top 10 point guard to people in the fantasy world. He was always a guy who I compared him to like Russell Wilson maybe 3-4 years ago when you would talk about the top quarterbacks in football. If you mentioned Russell Wilson, you're like, you know what? You actually know football, dog. Like with Tony Parker, he was one of those guys where it was like, you know what? You actually know hoops if you mentioned Tony Parker. And every time they played in big games with the Spurs, you could always count on him. So shout out to Tony Parker. Hell of a career. U is for untouchable. Deion Waiters is loyal to the streets. He's loyal to the game. Untouchable in the sense that he is not selling out his teammates. You cannot touch his teammates. He is not selling out who it was that gave him gummies that led to him having an anxiety attack, and now he's been suspended 10 games, I believe, by the NBA for that. Crazy story. You guys should definitely look it up. But Deion Waiters, man, shout out to you being a student of the game and not being a snitch. V is for violation. Jamal Adams absolutely violated Daniel Jones, bodied Saquon Barkley, and then literally stole the ball out of the hands of Daniel Jones. The Jets went on to beat the Giants. And, I'm a Giants fan. Did not care. Congrats. You beat the Giants. They have 2 wins all year. Enjoy. Big brother, little brother. That don't mean nothing to me. That's a win for the Giants. One step closer to the top pick in the draft. Trade that pick if you get number 1. Probably going to be the Bengals. But you have a top 3 pick. You won't need to spend it on a quarterback. You're chilling. So congrats, Jet fans. Enjoy that one. W is for Weissman, the number 1 projected player in the NBA draft, according to Chad Ford at ESPN. He was also suspended, but then ended up playing with Memphis. Again, the NCAA is just being very petty with things, and eventually the NCAA, I think, is going to be in deep, deep trouble if they're not in deep trouble already. A dude who is just being hit with sanctions and whatnot. X is for canceling and, exit out, and that's Pat Shurmur. I'm fed up with Pat Shurmur. 13 carries is what Saquon Barkley had over the weekend for 1 yard. And, at what point do you realize, I was able to realize watching this at home, yo, dog, he can't run up the middle. Stop running him out the middle. And Pat Shurmur just has I feel like he's losing the locker room. So, X that out. Y is for Yordan Alvarez, Astros rookie, unanimous rookie of the year. He won that accolade. We mentioned Pete Alonso before. Shout out to Yordani Alvarez. And Z is for Zabit. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, but he won over the weekend over a really fun fight against Calvin Kattar in Russia. It was a main event fight, but it was only 3 rounds. Zabit should be next in line to a title shot over Volkanovski and Max Holloway in the UFC's 145 division. And, that's the big headlining fight, that along with Covington Usman and Nunez and Durandamine. The next big pay-per-view in December, 245 in Las Vegas, the fabulous city of Las Vegas. So Zabit is next in line for the UFC. So that's it. ABC recap. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. You could go and watch this segment on YouTube, and you can see my reactions. Some of you guys are watching this on YouTube. So, you can see me putting the microphone down.